Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
The September 11 attacks on America were of surprising disproportion. Certainly, America had suffered surprise attacks in the past. Pearl Harbor, the best-known case, whilst threatening, was a direct act of war. September 11 attacks were not. Nonetheless, they were just as devastating and heralded a new kind of war on terror. The attacks were carried out by a tiny group of people. The group was dispatched by an organization almost unknown, based in one of the least understood countries on earth, Afghanistan. This organization recruited a mixture of young fanatics and highly educated individuals who could not find their place in their homeland. This organization is Al-Qaeda. In the second part of the 20th century, high birth rate and decline of infant mortality had produced a common problem throughout the Muslim world. A large, steadily increasing population of young men without any reasonable expectation of suitable employment, a sure sign of possible social turbulence. Many of these young men were the product of secular and religious schools, where the education system devoted little, if any, attention to the rest of the world. Frustrated in their search for a decent living, unable to benefit from their education, some of these young men were easy targets for radicalization. A decade of conflict in Afghanistan from 1979 to 1989 gave these young men a rallying point and training field. A communist government in Afghanistan gained power in 1978, but was unable to establish lasting control. At the end of 1979, the Soviet government sent in a military unit to ensure that the country would remain securely under Moscow's influence. The response was an Afghan national resistance movement, the Mujahideen, which defeated Soviet forces. Young Muslims from around the world flocked to Afghanistan to join as volunteers in what was seen as a holy war, jihad against an invader. The largest numbers came from the Middle East. Among them was Osama bin Laden. 23 years old when he arrived in Afghanistan in 1980, bin Laden was the 17th of 57 children fathered by a Saudi construction magnate. By some accounts, bin Laden had been interested in religious studies, inspired by tape recordings of fiery sermons by Abdullah Azam, a Palestinian and a disciple of Qutb. Together with cleric Azam, they joined in creating a Bureau of Services, which channeled new recruits into Afghanistan. The international environment for bin Laden's efforts was ideal. Saudi Arabia and the United States supplied billions of dollars worth of secret assistance to rebel groups in Afghanistan fighting the Soviet occupation. But bin Laden and his comrades had their own sources of support and training, and they received little or no assistance from the United States. April 1988 brought victory for the Afghan Jihad. Moscow declared it would pull its military forces out of Afghanistan within the next 9 months. As the Soviets began their withdrawal, the Jihad's leaders debated what to do next. Bin Laden and Osama agreed that the organisation successfully created for Afghanistan should not be allowed to dissolve. They established what they called a base or foundation as a potential general headquarters for future jihad. Al-Qaeda was born. Following the Soviet Union's withdrawal from Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia in 1990 as a hero of jihad, who along with his Arab Legion had brought down the mighty superpower of the Soviet Union. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. Bin Laden, whose efforts in Afghanistan had earned him celebrity and respect, proposed to the Saudi monarchy that his fighters retake Kuwait. He was rebuffed and the Saudis joined the US-led coalition. The presence of American soldiers in Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, with the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, enraged bin Laden. From that point, Osama bin Laden, a leading figure for so many young Muslims, turned radically anti-American. In June 1996, an enormous truck bomb detonated in a residential complex in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, that housed US Air Force personnel. 19 Americans were killed and 372 were wounded.
Let me be very clear. We will not resist, we will not rest in our efforts to find who is responsible for this outrage, to pursue them and to punish them. Anyone who attacks one American attacks every American, and we protect and defend our own.
By 1998, Al-Qaeda felt comfortable enough in their Afghan sanctuary to issue a declaration of war against Americans, and later a fatwa to kill Americans and their allies. A series of attacks followed in which hundreds of people were killed in simultaneous truck bomb explosions at the United States embassies in Tanzania and Kenya.
Our target was terror. Our mission was clear: to strike at the network of radical groups affiliated with and funded by Osama bin Laden, perhaps the preeminent organizer and financier of international terrorism in the world today.
The attack failed to harm bin Laden or the Al-Qaeda core, but killed 19 people. October 2000, USS Cole was in Aden Harbour for a routine fuel stop. A small craft approached the port side of the destroyer, and an explosion occurred, putting a 40 by 40 gash in the ship's port side. 17 sailors were killed, and 39 others were injured in the blast.
Terrorists are determined to intimidate and prevent the United States from pursuing our worldwide national security interests, and they will continue to tenaciously look for exposed seams in our force protection armor.
The Arab Afghans had come full circle. From being a mere appendage of the Afghan Jihad in the Cold War in the 1980s, they were now ready to wage war on the Western world. As 2001 began, Counter-terrorism officials were receiving frequent but fragmentary reports about threats. There were more than 40 intelligence articles in the President's daily briefs from January to September 2001 that related to bin Laden. As the sun rose on Tuesday, September 11, millions of New Yorkers woke to a beautiful and cloudless day. As usual, the subway was alive, buzzing with activity, commuters rushing to work or school. Some were making the trip to the financial district in South Manhattan, where the Twin Towers stood, the workplace for many. As usual, Tom Canavan was catching up on some sleep in the subway on his way to work. Brian Reeves was already at work. His shift as a security guard at the World Trade Center had started at 6 a.m. The World Trade Center was home to some of the biggest financial firms like Cantor Fitzgerald and Eurobroker, where Martin Borzewski and Michael Eichen worked. As Michael and Martin arrived in their office, they started planning their day. Tom Canavan arrived early and was getting ready for an important conference call. Everyday people simply going about their business on what seemed an ordinary day. In Washington, the country leaders were also starting the day. It was business as usual. Some, like Brian Birdwell, are going to the Pentagon. Others across the Potomac River were getting ready for a Congress session. Visitors lined up for a tour of the White House. For those heading to an airport to catch a flight, weather conditions could not have been better for a safe and pleasant journey. Among the travellers were Mohammed Atta and Aziz Al-Omari, who arrived at the airport in Portland, Maine. After spending the night in a comfort-inn motel, Atta and Al-Omari drove their rented Nissan to the nearby airport. Wearing tie and jackets, they presented their first-class ticket at the US Airways counter. Atta checked in 2 bags, Al-Omari none. A few minutes later, they passed through security and make their way to the boarding gate. The Colgan Air flight to Boston departs on time at 6 a.m. At 6:45 a.m. they arrived at Boston's Logan Airport and made their way to the connecting flight. Once again they passed through security and finally reached the boarding gate of American Airline Flight 11. Around the same time, Walid al-Shari, Wael al-Shari and Saitem al-Sukami, who will become known as the Muscle Hijackers, also arrived at Logan. All 3 hijackers would need to pass through a security checkpoint to reach the departure gate for their flight. Each would have been screened as they walked through a metal detector, calibrated to detect items with at least the metal content of a small caliber handgun. All make it to the departure lounge. All will board the flight. The last line of air travel security had failed. By 8 a.m., 19 hijackers had boarded transcontinental flights. All have defeated the security layer that America had in place to prevent a hijacking. Who were the people behind the hijacking? Where did they originate? And what was the motivation? These were the questions that all of America and the global community at large will be asking. Born in an Egyptian town in 1968, Mohammed Atta moved with his family to Cairo at the age of 10. He studied architecture at Cairo University, graduating in 1990, and continued his studies in Germany at the Technical University of Hamburg under the guidance of Dietmar Maschul. Shortly after his arrival in Germany, Atta became more religious. His friends in Hamburg described him as intelligent, religious, and politically motivated. In 1995, he performed the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to Mecca, an important religious duty for Muslims. Atta professor Dietmar Maschul got to know him well. Maschul, who himself specialized in the Middle East, was happy to help Atta when he could.
Ich habe dafür plädiert damals und habe nicht diesen Gebetsraum, in dem sie sich getroffen haben, sondern einen anderen. Es war früher da gesagt, ja klar, Mohammed, wenn ihr gläubig seid, ist doch klar, dann müsst ihr einen Raum haben, wo ihr beten könnt. Bin noch nie auf die Idee gekommen, dass das noch zu anderen Zwecken diente, nicht? Weil da gab es kein Indiz.
Die are nearly sure that they came not here as possible terrorists, but they came as students. They studied here, and sometime came a change.
The change almost certainly occurs when Atta started attending the Al-Quds Mosque. The mosque caters for the smaller Arab population of Hamburg and adheres to a fundamentalist version of Sunni Islam. Sermons delivered here under the leadership of Imam Mohammad Fazazi are radical, encouraging martyrdom and the killing of non-believers. Islamists radicals throughout Europe watch the videotape he makes.
Some of them speak against the United States, they speak against the Jewish people, but as we know now, not in a way which is punishable.
At Al-Quds, Atta met Marwan al-Shahi, Ramzi bin al-Shib and Ziad Jarrah, together forming the Hamburg Cell. Atta disappeared from Germany for periods, spending time in Egypt and presumably travelled to Afghanistan. Also at this time he will grow a beard. Many will see this as a sign of greater religious devotion. German authorities were aware of the fundamentalist nature of Al-Quds.
Also die Al-Quds-Moschee ist für uns nun nicht neu gewesen nach dem 11. September. Wir wussten, dass in der Al-Quds-Moschee ja auch Islamisten, also Fundamentalisten verkehrten, auch militante Fundamentalisten dort verkehrten. Ob und wie weit sie dort indoktriniert worden sind, jedenfalls die 3 Attentäter in den Flugzeugen, lässt sich schwer einschätzen.
In 1998, Mohammed Atta, no longer able to access university accommodation, moved into an apartment shared with the known Al-Qaeda cooperative. Here in Marienstrasse, the Hamburg cell continues to develop and become a more organized group. In many meetings, anti-American sentiment is on the rise, and the group starts plotting possible attacks. Over the years, many Al-Qaeda members will use the apartment, including hijacker Marwan al-Shahi.
Also deutlicher ist für mich jetzt ganz klar, dass Mohammed el-Amir, der sich Mohammed Atta nannte, Teil seines Namens, Sie kennen die Geschichte, dass der gesteuert war, eingefangen war in seinem Kopf von anderen, die ihn benutzt haben. Das scheint mir ganz deutlich zu sein.
Atta's religious conviction continues to grow. According to the 9/11 Commission report, Atta planned to go fight the Russian in Chechnya, but was convinced to go train for jihad in Afghanistan instead. Once in Afghanistan, things unfold quickly. Atta was selected by Al-Qaeda for a secret mission. Atta allegedly met with bin Laden, where he receives additional instructions. In early 2000, Atta returned to Hamburg, but he had changed. Reverting back to wearing Westerners' clothes, he distances himself from any radical movement and shaves his beard. In the spring of that same year, Atta arrived in the United States. A few weeks later, he commences pilot lessons. The rest is history.
Ich fand das unmenschlich und es war auch für mich unvorstellbar. Nach dem, wie ich Mohammed el-Amir, ich betone das immer ausdrücklich nicht, weil ich da 2 verschiedene Wesen sehe, sondern um deutlich zu machen, dass ich einen Menschen kannte und erlebte, der dem, was da passierte oder dem Menschen, der so etwas vollbringt, überhaupt nicht entsprechen kann in meiner Vorstellung.
We did not have any information about the persons, Atta al-Shahi Jarrah. They did not exist in our records. They had never committed any crime or criminal offense or something like that. There was no registration of these persons, and we did not know nothing about this address.
At 8:46 a.m, the clear blue sky in South Manhattan is suddenly overshadowed. Thick white smoke explodes out from the top of the north face of the North Tower. New Yorkers were stunned. A gaping hole through floor 93 to 99 left many to believe that a terrible accident just happened. A few minutes later, the first live pictures of the burning tower reached television viewers around the world. Initial reports were confusing. Some reported a bomb, others a small propeller plane. Between 100 and 250 people are trapped by burning fire in the upper floors. By breaking windows, they gasp fresh air. Those trapped are frantically waving at the police helicopter, desperate to be rescued. The dense smoke will prevent helicopters to attempt a rescue from the roof. For some, the heat and suffocating smoke is so intense that sadly, jumping seems like the only option left. Firefighter Daniel Sir will perish, hit by such a desperate worker. The world was unaware that the worst was still to come. People still wondering how a plane could have strayed so far off its flight path. They will soon have answers. In September 2001, Brian Reeves was a security guard at the World Trade Center. He was making his daily round in the lobby when he heard a loud explosion. A fireball blasted out of the elevator shaft, engulfing him in flames and throwing him through the ground floor windows of Tower 2. Having suffered burns to 40% of his body, he will be one of the 20 critically injured patients rushed to the Presbyterian's burn unit that day.
I screamed, and I balled up real tight. I was scared. I didn't know what to do, you know. And then as my eyes was closed, I saw my son's face like come right across me, you know. And something said, "Get up and run. You can run away." But then when I opened my eyes and I looked, about this close to my face was fire.
Reeves's road to recovery has been long and painful and is by no means over. Today he still battles serious psychological problems as a result of his extensive injuries. Emotions are kept in check with help and motivation from family. But anger lingers and is still a part of his life.
It's for me to it's like I want to go out there and do something, you know what I'm saying? But that's not me, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to go out there because somebody hurt me. I don't want to go out there to, you know what I'm saying?
Shortly after 9 a.m, at 950 kilometers an hour, a clear message was delivered. The first plane to crash was not an accident. America was under attack. The plane struck level 78 to 85. Forming a barrier between hope on the lower level and despair above the impact zone. The wingtip grazed the 78th floor sky lobby, instantly killing dozens of people waiting for elevators. In both towers, the staircases were located close together, in the core of the building, near the elevator shaft. When the first tower was hit, all stairways were immediately severed by the plane or blocked by debris following the blast. The impact on the South Tower, however, happened on levels where the stairs divert around heavy elevator machinery. So instead of running near the building core, 2 stairways are closer to the perimeter. On the northwest side, 1 stairway survived the impact. Many in both towers will survive. Survivor stories, phone calls, text messages and email from the upper levels help to estimate that more than 1,000 survived the initial crash. Some 300 of those are high in the South Tower, 800 more higher in the North Tower. "18 men and women from the impact zone or higher are known to have used the South Tower surviving staircase to reach the relative safety of New York streets. The plane's initial impact causes widespread damage on the floor above and below the impact zone. The twisting and bending of the buildings caused deformation of door frames, jamming them shut. Fallen debris and plasterboard blocked exit doors and stairwells. Hundreds find themselves trapped in offices, boardrooms or toilets. A small group of Port Authority workers freed 28 people trapped in offices on the 86th and 89th floor of the North Tower. They have to use considerable force to open the jammed doors. This small group of rescuers will never be seen again. Witnesses and those who managed to reach the streets were facing an emergency they could not comprehend.
I didn't see what happened, but I saw people jumping out of the building just now. I'm trying to see if my sister's all right. She's in that building. No, the World Trade Center itself. She's in the World Trade Center.
As the fire continued to consume both towers, weakening their structures, stories of tragic fate and lucky escape emerge. Jim Pierce, a cousin of George Bush, a managing director for the AON Corporation, had organised a conference for the morning on the 105th floor. As the group was too large for the meeting room on that floor, the conference was moved to the nearby Millennium Hotel. 12 participants, unaware the conference was moved, were on the 105th floor when the plane hit. Only one survived. As for President Bush himself, he was in Florida to promote his education reform at the time of the first attack. As he is reading with the students, Chief of Staff Andrew Card whispered to Bush, "A second plane hit the World Trade Center. America is under attack."
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
After his address, Bush is rushed to a back room and disappears from public eye for many hours. Soon after 9 a.m., many in the Pentagon received phone calls telling them to turn on their television. Like so many, they watch in horror the smoke coming from the World Trade Center as the live pictures of United Airlines Flight 175 crashing into the South Tower are broadcast. Departing a few minutes after Flight 175 is American Airline Flight 77, a Boeing 757 with 58 passengers, 6 crew members, and 37,000 litres of fuel. 5 hijackers are also on board the plane. Sometime between 8:50 and 8:54 a.m, they will gain control of the plane, change course, and head for Washington. Flight 77 crashes into the western side of the Pentagon and starts a violent fire. The passengers and crew members are all killed instantly. Brian Birdwell laid burning and bleeding on the second floor, meters from where the nose of the plane penetrated the building. 60% of his body is burned. He has difficulty breathing and can't stand up. Water started dripping from the sprinkler. The cold water extinguished the fire, searing his body. As the roaring fire continues to burn, Birdwell found the strength to open his eyes. Through the smoke pouring from the hallway and the scattered debris, he saw some lights. He knew he needed to get moving. He started to make his way towards the light. As he reaches the corridor door, Birdwell saw some friends. Exhausted, he collapsed in front of them. The men carry Birdwell out. Birdwell spent 92 days in hospital. There he undergoes 39 surgeries, some life-saving, others to reconstruct his face and ears. He said there was no way to describe the pain he went through. 9 men and women were sent to the burn unit that day. Only 2 were expected to survive. 8 ultimately did survive. The blast from the plane and the heat from the resulting fire killed 125 Pentagon personnel. A series of fortunate events prevented the loss of more lives. The crash site near the heliport was the best prepared to withstand such an attack. Following the attack in Oklahoma City, this side of the Pentagon was undergoing substantial renovation. The walls were being reinforced and a sprinkler system was being installed. On the morning of the attack, most of the work had been completed, and most offices were unoccupied due to the renovation. The reinforcement of the walls prevented the building from collapse for 30 minutes, enough time for hundreds of people to crawl to safety. The sprinkler system saved Brian Birdwell. At 9:45 a.m, all United States airspace is shut down. Civilian aircraft are grounded. All flights are ordered to land at the nearest airport as soon as possible. Air traffic control will redirect all international flights heading for the United States to Canada. No commercial flights are allowed in the sky until September 14. United Airline Flight 93 also receives the order to land as soon as possible, but no reply comes back from the cockpit. Beverly Eckert was on the phone with her husband Sean Rooney. Mr. Rooney wanted to know where the fire was as he was making his way to the roof, hoping to be rescued there. Still on the phone, Beverly heard a loud explosion before the line drops out. Like millions, she watched in horror. On the streets, a wave of panic hits onlookers. Unsure of what has just happened, they start running. The South Tower collapsed 56 minutes after being struck. Only 14 people escaped from the impact zone of the South Tower after it was hit, and only 4 people from the floors above it. They escaped via stairwell A, the only stairwell that had been left intact after the impact.
Is this a working camera? Okay, yes.
Sean Rooney and Michael Icahn are not with those who escaped. Monica and Michael Icahn met on September 11, 1999. They married a year later. Michael Icahn, a 37-year-old bonds broker, worked on the 84th floor of the South Tower. He had called his wife Monica soon after the first plane hit. He was safe. As Monica put the phone down, she saw from the corner of her eye the second plane hit. Monica tried to call Michael back. The line was dead. On September 12, Monica, like so many, was desperately searching for Michael. Picture in hand, she went through hospitals desperately hoping to find him. Like so many, she came back home with only his picture. Since the tragedy, Monica has gone on to form the September Mission, a foundation dedicated to the development of a memorial park for the victims on the World Trade Center site.
You can't build over people, and you know, a lot of people feel that way. Even people that, you know, didn't work down there, people that are, you know, haven't had lost anyone, they see it as the same thing. It's like a war zone, and you don't build on a war zone, and you don't build over dead people, and they might not feel comfortable having office space there in that area where you're kind of feeling like all those people lost their lives because they went to work.
Monica hoped for months, waiting for a call from Ground Zero with the news that they had found her husband's remains. The phone never rang. Finding closure has been incredibly hard for Monica. She feels it's important for the healing process to have a place, a memorial, on the site where Michael perished.
Something you can't explain. It's the way you'll connect with your loved one, whoever you are. You can maybe go to a particular spot and say, oh, he was here, you know, Tower 2, and maybe that area, and say, let me find a space for myself that I can always feel closure, and I'll come to that particular space, and Michael will meet me there, and I'm convinced I'll get closure every time I go there if I have the right space to do that in.
As the roar of the collapse goes silent, a grey-white cloud of powder concrete and gypsum rushes through the streets. Witnesses describe it as a heavy fog. Visibility was no more than 2 meters. Running from the cloud, people remain calm. Those who escape the cloud of smoke are mostly uninjured. Covered in dust, rubbing their eyes and looking dazed, they start walking away. The streets of New York looked like a war zone. The landscape was unrecognizable. As the crisis continued to escalate, more firefighters, police officers and paramedics rushed to the scene. Many would never be seen again. It is estimated that the collapse of the South Tower killed 630 people, almost everyone above the impact zone. In 2007, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office added Felicia Dunn-Jones to the official death toll. Dunn-Jones died 5 months after 9/11 from a lung condition, which was linked to exposure to dust during the collapse of the World Trade Center. The collapse of the South Tower also affected those who were escaping the North Tower. Tom Canavan, a 42-year-old security specialist, was working in a bank on the 47th floor of the North Tower. He was on a conference call when at 8:46 a.m. a plane crashed higher in his building. He had ample time to evacuate before the collapse, but he stayed behind to help put securities back in the vault. At 9:03 a.m. when the second plane hit, Canavan was in a congested stairway making his way down. At 9:59, Canavan was following the evacuation route. He passed through revolving doors and was making his way in an underground shopping mall that connected the North and South Tower. He heard a rumble. The South Tower was coming down. Tom was buried alive. Remarkably, as he opens his eyes, Canavan realizes he is not alone. Both Tom and the other men will crawl through 70 feet of debris from the underground mall to an outdoor plaza. 25 minutes after he was buried alive, Tom Canavan was free.
Big boom, come down the steps, everything fine till we got to the basement, and then everything just fell in. I got trapped in there with another guy, crawled out, kept getting hit in the head, hit bags all around, finally we clawed our way out over the rubble. And we did it right.
Tom was soon taken to hospital where he received a few stitches and then checks himself out. As the year passes, the physical wounds will heal, but he will find it harder to heal the psychological effects caused by the collapse.
Because at first I had no trouble sleeping, and it was sort of brushed aside. I don't know if it was a denial or whatever, but now it affects me. I sleep maybe 4 hours a night. I'm on medication.
Since crawling out and walking away almost uninjured, Canavan has struggled. Mostly, his feelings were affected. He found himself snapping quite often. He had no patience for his wife and children. Through therapy, he manages to get his emotions under control. Returning to work quickly was also beneficial in his recovery. As the life of millions has in one way or another changed, Tom's words echo those of a great majority.
It didn't really change me, but it made me realize that my life before this, that I had it good before this, that I didn't realize how good it was before this, and that I just wanted to be like it was. I don't need it to be any better. I just need it to be as it was before any of this happened.
At 10:03, the last hijacked plane will miss its target. The courage of those on board will ensure that many more casualties are avoided. The plane fragmented upon impact, leaving a large crater. Debris was found kilometres from the crash site. Phone calls made from the plane uncovered unlikely heroes. Jeremy Glick called his wife and told her the flight was hijacked by 3 dark-skinned men that looked Iranian, wearing red bandanas and wielding knives. Glick remained connected until the end of the flight. He reported that the passengers voted whether to rush the hijackers. Elizabeth Wenyo called her stepmother at 9:53 and concluded 4.5 minutes later by saying, "I have to go. They're breaking into the cockpit." Sandra Bradshaw on the phone with her husband said, "Everyone is running up to first class. I've got to go. Bye." The revolt on Flight 93 began at 9:57. The hijackers in the cockpit became aware of the revolt seconds later. Amidst the sounds of the passenger counterattack, the aircraft ploughed into an empty field in Stony Creek, Pennsylvania. Flight 93 intended target remains a mystery. From inside the North Tower, horrific stories will emerge. Tom McGuinness, a trader, was attending a special meeting on the 92nd floor when Flight 11 crashes into the tower. There was a huge explosion. Around him, walls collapsed. Smoke started filling his office. Through the window, he could see people falling or jumping from the floors above. Mr. McGuinness surveys the damage around him and realizes he was trapped. There was no way out. He called his wife Liliana, the mother of 4-year-old daughter Caitlin. It was 10:26. The fire raged on the west side of the 92nd floor. The phone lines cut.
Also, would you make everyone aware that we're going to be feeding some tape?
Tom McGuinness will not survive. From the moment Flight 11 hit the North Tower, evacuation proceeded efficiently. The elevators were all rendered unusable, however the 3 stairways survived. The 102 minutes between the impact and collapse allowed the vast majority of the workers below the impact zone to escape the building safely. No one on the 91st floor or above is believed to have survived. It is estimated that approximately 1,300 people on these floors perished. No one knows how many survived the initial crash. No one knows how many survived the horrific fire and toxic smoke. In the upper level, many are forced to break windows to get a gasp of fresh air. The light northerly wind kept the north corner of the roof clear of smoke, and helicopter rescue should have been possible. However, the Port Authority had all the doors to the roof of the tower locked. During the 1993 bombing, 28 people were rescued from the roof by helicopter. Shortly after the South Tower collapse, a police helicopter radioed a warning for firefighters to evacuate the north. Unfortunately, most of the firefighters' radios did not work inside the towers. Very few heard that order. 121 firefighters were killed when the tower collapsed. When the dust started to clear, Lower Manhattan was mostly empty. People had fled. News cameras captured images of one shirtless, lonely man, wandering aimlessly. His name is Les Sweeting.
That way, girl, that way. That way's the girl. He's looking for my wife. We were in the building when he hit. My wife and daughter.
That's the way.
Straight all the way down. On to Jersey?
Yeah.
All the way down at the end of the park. Pardon?
Who's your name, Barry?
No, my name's Sweeting. I've lost my wife and daughter. We were in the building when it hit. And I saw the second plane go into the building, into the second building.
Everyone's down this way, so maybe they're down there.
Well, I've just come from around there. I've walked down. Thank you anyway.
Les Sweeting was holidaying in New York with his wife and daughter. They were all in their hotel room in the World Trade Center complex, getting ready when the first plane hit. Debris flows past the window. Les, still getting ready, told his wife to go ahead. He will join them in a minute. In the confusion following the first tower collapse, Christine and her daughter Nicola run towards Battery Park. They took a ferry to Staten Island, not knowing where Les was. Les spent hours searching for them among the choking streets. Later, he took a ferry to New Jersey. There, he found refuge in a Red Cross shelter. Christine spent the night watching television coverage, searching every face for a sign of Les. The next afternoon, they are all reunited. Les Sweeting never spoke about what he'd seen. He will die suddenly in September 2006. Around 50 men and women died in what will be known as Hotel 9/11. Soon after the tower had crumbled, hundreds of dazed firefighters were on the scene. Many were crying, others sitting on piles of debris, were trying to come to terms with what had just happened. The collapse of the towers took an incredible toll on the first responders. According to the 9/11 Commission report, the New York Fire Department suffered 343 fatalities, the largest loss of life of any emergency response agency in history. The Port Authority Police Department suffered 37 losses. The New York Police Department lost 23 officers. Among the casualties were a number of senior staff, including the FDNY Chief of Department and the Port Authority Police Superintendent. Incredibly, 12 firefighters, 1 PAPD officer and 3 civilians who were descending stairwell B of the North Tower survived its collapse. Lieutenant Mickey Cross, a firefighter at the East 29th Street Station, is one of the lucky 12. Cross lost many friends on that tragic morning. Like almost all the other firefighters in New York that day, Mickey Cross responded to the emergency at the World Trade Center. He was just east of the South Tower when he heard a tremendous explosion. From where he was, he could not see what just happened. It was the second plane hitting the other tower. He entered the building and started to head up. As he made his way up stairway B, workers were making their way down, making progress difficult. Then the building started to shake. Cross didn't know what was happening. He will later learn the shaking was caused by the South Tower collapse. As evacuation orders were given in the North Tower, Cross started to descend. Somewhere around the 18th or 19th floor, Cross joined 6 men from ladder 6 in their quest to save a woman, Josephine Harris, who had a problem walking. Slowly they made their way down. Then, suddenly, Cross heard a tremendous roar coming from above. The North Tower was coming down on him. Cross, the men from ladder 6 and Josephine Harris were buried under all but 5 stories of that building. All are alive. All managed to climb their way out of the rubble.
110-story building fell down, and I was in the middle of it. Now here I am, and there's nothing wrong with me. And then I think about all the people that were dying at that moment. You know, friends of mine that were dying at that moment as those buildings were coming down. You know, so that's what this is a very mixed up. I don't have one set of feelings about this. It's very mixed up.
Mickey Cross's next memory was the following Thursday night, when he was going for the beginning of the recovery effort. He had volunteered to go down to work at the World Trade Center. Once on site, as he saw the flame, Cross was wondering why he was going back. As he started working, he felt better. Lieutenant Cross became obsessed with being there. He kept volunteering to go. He officially did 2 months of recovery work before the fire department tells him he could not go anymore. He went on his own anyway. Cross's friend, a psychologist, tells him that if he felt better on the site, then he should keep going.
I do get a sense of peace of mind when I'm there. If I stay away from there too long, I get fidgety. You know, I just spent a couple of days away on Long Island, and I couldn't wait to get back. I went supposedly to relax, and I wasn't relaxed at all. I couldn't wait to get back into town. So, yeah, it's going to be an experience when this ends for me.
Cross will spend months searching for fallen colleagues. Every time they find a fireman or a cop, everybody stops work and they send a stretcher down, even though what they've found would fit into a small shopping bag. The cops and the firefighters line up. A flag covers the stretcher. They take their hats off and carry it out. Mickey is now retired from the FDNY and now collaborates with the Memorial Museum Foundation and volunteers his time speaking for the World Trade Center Tribute Center. Only 20 who were trapped in the rubble got out, most within a few hours after the collapses. Tom Canavan crawled with another man through 30 feet of twisted steel in the underground shopping mall after the South Tower fell at 9:59 a.m., escaping just before the North Tower fell 29 minutes later. Pasquale Basili of Rivervale lost consciousness in a collapsing North Tower stairway. Hours later, he awoke atop the debris and was carried away by a rescue team. 14 others, including Mickey Cross, huddled in that same North Tower stairwell. Just after noon, they climbed the stairs to the top of the Ground Zero rubble field. Early in the afternoon, the first bulldozers arrived to begin moving debris. Later, dozens of firefighters began combing through the rubble, but after only half an hour of searching, fears of another collapse forced them to scramble away. Officials feared the collapse of 7 World Trade Center, another high-rise burning in the complex, as well as other high-rise buildings bordering the complex. By early evening, 7 World Trade Center finally fell. Port Authority police officer Will Gimino was cut from the rubble later that evening. Gimino's partner, Sergeant John McLaughlin, was pulled free just after 7 a.m. on September 12. Janelle Guzman McMillan will be the last person pulled alive from the wreckage of the World Trade Center. It was just after 12:30 p.m. on September 12. The towers had fallen 27 hours earlier. McMillan's head was stuck between 2 pieces of concrete, her legs sandwiched by pieces of a stairway. Her toes had gone numb hours ago. Her right hand was pinned under her leg. Only her left hand was free. As night fell on New York and Washington, what everyone knew was confirmed.
American Airlines Flight 11 departed Boston for Los Angeles, hijacked by suspects armed with knives. This plane crashed into the World Trade Center. United Airlines Flight 175 departed Boston for Los Angeles, was hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Center. American Airlines Flight 77 departed Washington Dulles for Los Angeles, was hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. United Airlines Flight 93 departed Newark for San Francisco, was hijacked and crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you. Good night, and God bless America.
The sun rises on the 12th against a curtain of grey soot and smoke. New York was an urban wasteland of deserted streets and crushed vehicles. New Yorkers watched in horror as the World Trade Center complex smouldered. In the afternoon, citizens already traumatized were shaken even more by the rumbling collapse of the remainder of the South Tower. No one was seriously injured, but rescue workers feared for those who could still be alive, trapped in the rubble. Fears of gas leaks and the possibility of asbestos and other toxic substances in the air further complicated the rescue effort. Exhausted firefighters kept working. 2 cranes lifted wreckage so that the searchers with dogs and sound probes could detect signs of life as firefighters picked through the rubble. In the toxic air, workers had to rinse their eyes every 5 minutes. It was hard work.
Oh, man, your eyes are burning, that dust in your face, it's a lot. It's too much, man. It's just, God forbid what happened, man.
A cell phone tower had collapsed and landed upright on the ground. Someone climbed the tower and attached an American flag. Everyone stopped and saluted for a second. Volunteers moved debris aside in search of survivors. Every time they turned over a piece of steel, they would find body parts. One rescue worker found 3 bodies in the ruins during 16 hours of work. One was not identifiable. The second was the corpse of a man. The third was burned beyond recognition.
I saw the first tower, South Tower, drop, and tears just came streaming from my eyes. The second tower dropped, and we were just like 15, 20 minutes later, and it was the most horrific thing I have ever seen in my life. I will never forget what I saw.
In the streets around Ground Zero, the coating of dust and ash became an open book. On a red car, someone wrote, "We won't forget," on the windshield. And New York will stand steadfast on the passenger side. Names of missing firefighters were written on building windows. A crushed bus read, "In God we trust." Emergency crews worked tirelessly, unaware they were putting their lives at risk on many levels. The pile of debris was unstable and dangerous. In the air, invisible particles were floating. Police officer Richard Volpe and his partner John Walcott arrived at Ground Zero shortly after the towers had collapsed. They searched the pile for survivors the first few days as part of the bucket brigade, wearing only surgical masks for protection. They spent the next several months recovering body fragments, volunteering on days off. They felt so strongly about the mission that they braved the conditions even as they began coughing up blood. According to a 2006 report, 70% of 9/11 first responders have debilitating respiratory illnesses. Many of them have been ill for years and will be for the rest of their lives.
Well, I think from the beginning, I think that the actual site could have been secured a lot better. I don't hear of, that I know of any illnesses from the site in Washington. I mean, they sealed the whole site off. Everybody that was in there had proper respirators and they had the Tyvek suits. And it seems like nobody got sick from there. Here in the World Trade Center, where the toxins were probably 1,000,000 times worse than there, they didn't take any of those preventions to help the people that were here.
Volpe now suffers from kidney failure and respiratory problems. Together with his partner, John Walcott, they started a class action to try to get compensation for the health problems they'd suffered as a result of being involved with the rescue operation. They won the case late 2010. In early 2011, President Obama signed the 9/11 Health Act, providing first responders with health care.
And even if the city wasn't negligent and these people got sick because they weren't given respirators, and it's no one's fault, how do you not compensate firemen and cops, construction workers who went down there to help America and who are sick and dying today, especially when there's a fund set aside for that purpose? It's very sad.
Marty wasn't supposed to be on the 104th floor that morning. He'd been put in charge of the new Cantor Fitzgerald office on the Jersey Shore. It was supposed to have opened in July, but that got pushed back to Labor Day, then pushed back again. The remains of Marty were never found. His mother and sisters are unable to move on without clinical confirmation.
My sister and I had gone and bought flowers, and I was just like, where do I put them? Where do we take them? And it's just very, you're telling me he's gone. Well, where is he? Where did he go? Where did he go that you can't even find him?
For Americans, understanding what happened proved difficult. (2,832) were killed in New York, 125 more in Washington. The World Trade Center burned for 69 days, emitting more than 200 different chemicals. 291 bodies were discovered intact in the rubble. (19,500) body parts were collected. Only 1,102 victims were identified. (1,616) families were issued a death certificate without a body to bury. More than 3,000 children lost a parent. Their average age was 8. In New York, first responders are still dying today as a result to exposure to harmful chemicals. The financial cost is estimated at more than 11 trillion. The emotional cost cannot be counted. Martin Borachewski touched a lot of people. People such as Jeff and Marie Brunner. Martin always made sure to visit them. He spent time with their 7-year-old son Tyler, teaching him the basics of baseball. When the Brunners learned that Martin had died, they told their son Tyler. Tyler cried. Not fully understanding, Tyler wrote a letter to Marty to say thank you for being his friend. Someday, maybe Tyler will understand what happened that day. Someday, maybe everyone will.